Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
All right, folks. So we're here with another breakdown for you, as usual.
Yeah.
And as of this recording, it is the 50th anniversary of this movie.
Yeah.
And Ricardo and I were throwing a couple ideas around, and we settled on this movie. We're going to cut to the chase here. It was directed by Robert Klaus, and it was originally released in the United States on August 19th of 1973.
Yeah.
Today, we are talking about Enter the Dragon.
Oh, yeah, baby. I was so
Mm,
excited. As soon as you said it, and I was like, I didn't realize that the anniversary was up. And then you said it, and I got the text. And you were like, hey, the anniversary's up. Enter the Dragon. And I was like, yes. Exclamation points. Yes, that's the one. Let's do that one.
Yeah, when we talk about Bruce Lee's movies, obviously this was the last one he filmed before he passed
Mhm.
away. First full film completed, but it's probably his most iconic film. It
Yeah.
just success wise and such. So
Yeah, there's looks in this movie that I had mentioned to you off air that are some of his most iconic looks that when you think about Bruce Lee, you think of the imagery that are in this movie. I know I do, especially that when I think of Bruce Lee, I think of a certain image of him in this movie, and we'll talk about it when we get there. But there's something very iconic about the movie, the characters, and just Bruce Lee as a whole.
absolutely. So let's get started.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so we have our opening scene here, and it's uh it's Bruce playing the character of Lee,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a match,
Yeah.
but I feel like they're almost sparring. They're not really going too hard on each other because they have the gloves,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess like a speedo type deal.
Yeah, they're
Um,
just in trunks,
right,
and
right.
you just see how ridiculously shredded Bruce Lee is.
Yeah, I'm curious. I didn't take the chance to look it up, but I'm curious if whoever choreographed this or the director, if he was watching wrestling at the time, pro wrestling,
Mhm,
because they look like they're in wrestling trunks.
mhm.
And it's this was before MMA existed. So they
Yeah,
were having like a half wrestling match, half MMA match. And it ends with a tap out, you know.
yeah.
But
It almost looked like at the end, I don't know what it was exactly, but in the wrestling world, it looked like a crucifix pin with a submission. And
yeah,
it was very interesting. I was like, oh, and I haven't seen this movie in a very, very, very long time. I used to watch the movie all the time as a kid, and I haven't been able to watch it since. So it was a lot of things were fresh and new to me watching it this time as an adult. But yeah, this opening sequence, and they got the finger, they got, well, not fingerless, but they have almost like MMA style gloves with padding up to the
yeah,
knuckles and fingers, and just their tips are out and everything else. And again, we just get to see just how flawless Bruce Lee is as a martial artist. And again, dude was ripped beyond belief.
yeah. So we move on from this scene here, and Lee does get approached by a man named Braithwaite.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get into it, one of Lee's students comes along and he trains with him a little bit. He's teaching him about kicks.
Yeah.
And there's a couple lines thrown here. And I think we should reenact that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, let's take a look at that here. Um, I'm gonna bow to Ricardo on this one because he has more on-screen fight choreography than I do. So I'm gonna
What?
bow. I'm gonna bow to Ricardo to be Bruce Lee, and
Okay.
I'll play Lau. Lau's the student. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right, here we go. Kick me. Kick me.
Lau kicks.
What was that? An exhibition? We need emotional content. Try again.
Lau kicks.
I said emotional content, not anger. Now, try again with me.
Lau kicks.
That's it. How did it feel to you?
Let me think. Smacks him.
Don't think, feel. It's like a finger pointing away to the moon.
Smacks him again.
Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all the heavenly glory. Do you understand?
Lau bows. Lee smacks him one more time.
Never take your eyes off your opponent, even when you bow.
Such a fun scene.
It is. It's a fun scene. It's a great coaching scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where we have that idea of coaching, the mixture of coaching what's in front of you with the sport or the physical contact, and then also a little bit of philosophy in there. You know what I mean? Never, especially the thing with the finger. It's like, don't think, feel. It's like a finger pointing the way to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger, or you'll miss the heavenly glory. Like, don't necessarily concentrate on the thing doing the pointing. Look at where you need to look.
Yeah. It's almost as if Lee kind of incorporated some of his philosophy into this scene, because he's a pretty philosophical guy when you hear him
Yes,
talking in interviews.
I could hear him talk all day. I used to love listening to him in interviews, and when when YouTube really blew up, I remembered like watching Bruce Lee interviews on YouTube and just hearing him talk about certain things and just the way he carries himself and everything else. I'd be fascinated. Like, he was an individual that I would love to be able to have sit in a room with. When you get those questions, where is there anybody if you could bring back to just have a cup of coffee or sit with? Bruce Lee would be one of those guys. I would love to pick his brain.
Alrighty, so we start getting into the plot here a little bit more. Lee, a highly proficient martial artist and instructor from Hong Kong, he's approached by a man named Braithwaite, a British intelligence agent who is investigating a suspected crime lord named Han. Now, Lee is persuaded to attend a high-profile martial arts tournament on Han's private island to gather evidence that will prove Han's involvement in drug trafficking and prostitution. And so perhaps a foundation for what will become known as Mortal Kombat. I don't know.
Yes, the idea of we have the tournament, and it's just like, ooh, we got ourselves a tournament here.
Yeah.
We got people from coming all over the place to this island. They're gonna have a tournament. I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, and it's not, it's not a concept that wasn't just used in Mortal Kombat. It's,
no, there are
Street Fighter, obviously.
there are plenty of stories, whether it's games or movies or literature, where we have a tournament where people come together. Definitely.
So right before his departure, Lee also learns that the man responsible for his sister's death, O'Hara, is working as Han's bodyguard on the island. And I put it down here that after the flashback, you see Lee, but he has tears coming down his face. For the most part, the character of Lee, but also Bruce Lee in his films, he's a pretty stoic actor because it's a part of the persona. But I thought it was interesting that they made it a point to give him tears to show that he was sad when he found out how his sister died.
Yeah, it's like you said, especially because we're used to the stoic nature of Bruce Lee, and to incorporate in the movie. Like, again, it's something that isn't necessarily a big thing when it comes to other actors and other films, but there was an image to Bruce Lee, and the idea of having even just a single teardrop fall down his face was pretty important. People weren't really used to seeing that type of thing, so to see him crying is like, oh, Bruce, like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, as a viewer watching the movie, it's like, oh wow, you know what I mean? And then dealing obviously with what happened to his sister.
So we shift to Lee on the boat here, and there's a man by the name of Parsons who he's bullying the other people on the boat. And he starts trying to bother Lee, and Lee's like, save your energy. We have the tournament. But Parsons won't stop.
Nope.
He asks Lee his style, and Lee says, my style? You can call it the art of fighting without fighting. So
I love it. I love that.
Right. Yet another line, from a one-liner from this movie.
It's one of those, I don't know, like, it's just another one of those things that I appreciated about Bruce Lee as a person, and I'm appreciating it about this character. The idea of, oh, my my style is the art of fighting without fighting, and it's, I don't know, there's just something really really cool about that aspect of thinking of a way to overcome your enemy or overcome a bully in a situation without ever having to lift a fist. And I think that's I really enjoy that aspect.
Yeah. I liked how Lee outsmarted him. He would follow up to outsmart him right afterward.
Yep.
It's like, well, we can use this boat. We can go to that island over there, and then we can fight. We don't have enough room on this boat here.
Yeah.
So Parsons gets on the boat and then just very
Whoop.
nonchalantly, like, and then he's yelling at him, "Hey, let me back on." He's just like, "All right, I'll let you go. Just stay right there." and,
Yep.
and
And
then
and like the boat is filling with water and he's sinking and everybody's laughing, everybody's
he,
pointing.
he
You know what
gives
I
the
mean?
rope to a little kid.
Yep. He's like, here you go. And it's so good. And like it
Yeah,
just showed, it's another one of those situations again that translates to real life, where if we're dealing with a bully or anything of that nature, it doesn't always have to come down to physical violence. There are ways that we can get past this. And it's, usually when you think martial arts, whether it's martial arts movies or anything like that, I've always appreciated those characters that we see depicted in film, that it's absolutely a last resort, to turn to violence. And I've always appreciated that. And I appreciate that about Bruce Lee. I appreciate that about this character. And it was like, hey, I've got an even better way. And like you said, he's like, we can't do it in the boat. There's no room. And he goes, oh, well, how about that island over there? And he just comes up with this scheme like that. And he just sets it and he gives it to the little kid. And that guy gets what was coming to him. And he didn't have to lift a finger. It was awesome.
yeah. It's funny though, because the very last shot we see, it looks like the lifeboat is going down. So
Yeah,
you're
dude.
you're
It's
you're
sinking,
wondering,
dude.
like, is he gonna make it? Like,
Yeah. It's sinking. Like he's kicking
yeah,
his feet and he's trying to stay dry and everybody's laughing. And it's like, worst come to worst, he could just grab the rope. He'll be all right.
right,
He'll be all
exactly.
right.
So also fighting in the competition are a man named Roper, who is a gambling addict, and he has some debts, and someone else by the name of Williams, who
Yeah.
is a fellow Vietnam War vet, just like Roper. Um, Two great characters that we will see as we
Yes.
continue.
I enjoyed both of these characters very much.
Yeah. So at the end of the first day, Han gives strict orders to the competitors not to leave their rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Lee ignores this and he makes contact with a covert op named Mai Ling. And he sneaks into Han's underground compound looking for evidence. And this is Mission Impossible style. Just,
Yes. The tight black suit,
yeah.
sneaking around incognito and everything else. And yeah, that's exactly what it is. We are in the Mission Impossible sequence right now.
I thought it was cool because we got to see Lee use his agility
Yes.
in this scene. And I mean, I'd like to think that maybe the mics were on. It's just he was that
Mhm.
quiet, you know?
I Dude, look, if anybody could be that light on their feet, it's Bruce. You know what I mean? Like he's so light on his feet. And maybe there's some movie match that went into play, but I would love the idea of knowing that he could just be that silent.
So he is discovered by several guards, but he does manage to escape.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, Han orders his giant enforcer Bolo to kill.
Yes,
Yeah,
bro.
Bolo Young. Yeah, yeah, yep.
Anytime I see Bolo, I get so excited, man. Like my brain goes to Bloodsport and everything
Bloodsport.
else that Bolo's done. And like, I don't know, I just love Bolo as an actor and as a character in movies.
It's great. He orders him to kill the guards in public for failing their duties.
Mm-hmm.
And after the execution, the competition resumes with Lee facing O'Hara. So
Yeah.
now Lee is facing the man that is responsible for his sister's death. And I wanted to make a note here. The flashback, she's a pretty good martial artist herself,
She's
so
fantastic. She's great. I
she's
love this whole scene.
yeah, she's getting rid of guys left and right. She even gives it to O'Hara a little bit, but he corners her. And instead of, him doing whatever he was going to do to her, she takes her own life. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty interesting shot. She grabs a shard of glass and it's a first person view and you see the hands come in,
Yeah.
or when she takes her own life. Um, so, Lee is having flashbacks of this moment that he never saw, but he's having flashbacks in his mind of, her trying to get away from O'Hara. We open up with another iconic line here. O'Hara breaks a board inches away from Lee's face, and Lee says the infamous line. What does he say, Ricardo?
Board doesn't hit back.
Yeah.
It's again, and
Yeah.
it's such a minor thing, because when we watch martial artists, and this is not to take anything away from that,
Oh, yeah.
but we see martial art break bricks, break wood, etc., and it's an amazing feat in itself. But right now we're in a fighting tournament, and this character is using this as a form of intimidation against Lee, where he's like, pop, and he pops the wood and he breaks it, and he's trying to intimidate Lee, and Lee's like, wood doesn't hit back. You know what I mean? Like, there's a big, clear difference about what I'm capable of doing versus this piece of wood that you're trying to intimidate me with.
And it was almost like a I don't want to say controversial, but almost like a shout to the martial arts art form in general, because breaking boards is a big part of martial arts.
Very, like I said, it's you could find videos and bricks and wood and everything else. Yeah.
And Bruce Lee almost looks to the camera and winks and says, "Hey, that's impressive, but boards don't hit back."
Don't hit back.
Such an iconic line.
Yeah.
Lee beats O'Hara in humiliating fashion. He doesn't get a single hit in.
Nope. Flawless victory through and through.
Yes. The fight, this is where we see Bruce really turn it on.
Yeah.
Lightning fast. There's a clear distinction from the opening fight where we saw him, and then up until now, it's like, oh, that was sparring. Now this is a real fight.
Yeah.
And you just see just how fast Bruce is, just, with his punches, with his kicks, with his flips, whatever the case may be. There was no CGI. It is unreal when you think about it. After the fight is over with, O'Hara, he can't take the loss, so he just grabs 2 bottles that are sitting there,
bro,
breaks them, barroom style, charges Lee, and obviously Lee, takes him down, and then we get an iconic moment here. He takes him down, and in slow motion, Lee jumps up.
Dog, it's that iconic jump up and stomp and
the
what I
face.
mean? Like,
yes.
Like you can't.
So
I remember like being a kid and imitating that and doing the jump and stomping down and just doing the and like the face shake and just you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can't help, and you see it more than once. And you've seen it in other projects as well. But like, again, that's something that I've always matched with Bruce Lee, like just that iconic jump, leap, and stomp with the twist and in the face, and like you just see the striations and the basket, just everything all together. It's just such a great image.
Bruce knew what he was doing in this scene. He said, "I'm going to ham it up for the camera, and we're just going to go." And to this day, one of the most iconic moments. I did look this up. Key eyes have been around for years, decades, in martial arts. For those of you that don't know, that's the term used when you hear the martial artist make a noise, ki eye, ha, ha. You'll hear them, and each one makes their own noise. And Bruce chose to use this high-pitched noise as his ki eye. And but to add along with that, he added the facial the facial movements to go along with it, and it just became a signature thing for Bruce Lee to do this. And apparently the reason given is that if he was to do this in real life, apparently it would instill more fear in his opponents, and
absolutely,
that's why he did it on film.
Absolutely, I can see that, because there's this again, it's the facial expressions, the sounds that he makes, and it's interesting because you can close your eyes and you could listen to Bruce Lee make those sounds, and you'd be like, that's Bruce Lee. It's very similar to the late Jason David Frank. Whenever Jason David Frank would do martial arts, he had a very specific sound with his kicks. I can't even do it. It was like, like it was very specific.
Yeah, not bad actually.
and like Bruce has a very specific sound to him in nature that when he's doing it on screen or anything else, you can't help but think Bruce Lee. And I wouldn't look like if I had an individual in front of me with those facial expressions and those sounds, I might be a little intimidated as well. Just the way that he said that, it would intimidate his opponents and whatnot.
Right.
So he put it in the movie. And again, even from something on screen, if we're just talking about this from a movie aspect, if we take out the reality of martial arts in the world, and we just focus on this as a movie, it's a great thing because it helps differentiate how Bruce Lee fights on screen, how he sounds on screen versus other fighters. Again, Jean-Claude Van Damme has very specific sounds when he fights. You know what I mean? Anybody of that nature. So like from just an actor's perspective, it's a great thing to do because again, it immediately separates him as a character actor to other character actors.
That's a great note. You bring that up because um, Bruce made it a point to separate himself because martial arts films had been around before he was
Mm-hmm.
around. So
Yeah.
he found a way to separate himself from other people. And obviously, he did this in other movies too. But, we're just talking about this one today that
Yeah.
showcased, his distinct style. So in this moment, the character of Lee does get vengeance for his sister. And at the end of the day, well, actually, Han actually ends the day early because he said that there was some treachery here as far as
Mm-hmm.
O'Hara is considered, and disgraced them. Han confronts Williams, who also left his room the previous night to exercise,
Yeah.
and Han believes Williams has knowledge of the intruder, Lee. And after a brawl between the two, he ends up beating Williams to death with his iron prosthetic hand. Now,
Yeah.
this is one of the first major deaths from the protagonists, anyway. That we
Shocked
see.
me when I was a kid.
Yeah, because Williams is such a likable character.
Yes.
He's been so
Very.
smooth, and
He had this vibe that he just felt in a word like cool. Like he was
right.
suave. He was cool. You know what I mean? So like you said, it is a character death that I remember when I was younger. It shocked me. I was like, hold on. What? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, he's the cool one. He's BA. Like he's this, he's that. Like when he's in the room with the women and he wants to leave, they're like, you can't go out there. And he's just very like, huh, really? And then just goes anyway. Like he's just cool. So yeah, this scene and watching it again today for the first time in a long time, I was like, man, I forgot, man. I just completely forgot.
Yeah, and it's an odd scene how he dies too. I believe all the women are high at the
Yeah.
moment because they're all laughing. They're on drugs. Well, it's
Yeah.
it's a prostitution ring,
Yep.
so they're doing whatever they got to do to get through the day. So, as a child, I didn't understand what was happening when I saw
Oh
that.
yeah, easily.
So and it was on TV too, so it was kind of like a muted version
Mm-hmm.
when I saw it. But now it's like, oh, they were high, and it just adds to the eeriness of his death.
Yeah. Because they're legitimately just laughing at
they're
his
laughing,
expense.
and remember the shot, the one woman with the sunglasses.
Yep.
And they focus on it.
Yes.
She's still laughing. Her sunglasses are broken. There might be shards of glass in her face, but she's still laughing while Williams is getting beaten to death by Han.
It was a very good thing for them to incorporate because, like you said, she's not phased. Like, first of all, let's not ignore the fact that he's a big man, and when he falls on her, like all that weight is falling on her, and she doesn't react to the weight. She doesn't feel any pain. She just continues laughing, and when he gets off, you see the glasses are broken. And like as a kid, like you said, you don't really pick up on that nature, and nor should we. And we're watching, and they're clearly all under some sort of influence because again, they're laughing at his expense as he's being beaten to death right in front of them. And it just adds to the horrific nature of it all. And again, you don't grasp it as a kid, but as an adult, you're like, this is a very, very disturbing scene.
Right. So eventually Han reveals his drug operation to Roper, the other cool guy. He's cool as well, kind of looking like a James Bond actor almost,
And every time I see him, I always think Nightmare on Elm Street. That's just always been my thing. I'm like, that's
okay.
the dad. So like
Yeah.
seeing him in this movie again, going back and seeing him be this cool character and not a sleazeball, not like a bad guy, and just him actually holding his own with the martial arts. It's cool. I like Roper. Roper's dope.
So he reveals everything to Roper, thinking he will join the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And Han low-key threatens to imprison Roper along with the other martial artists who joined Han's tournaments in the past, because he doesn't reveal that once you come, you don't leave the island.
You don't
Yeah.
go. Yep.
So they're all there, and it's almost like, well, he doesn't say, but if you don't say yes, this is going to be you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The
so,
imagery was terrifying
hmm,
when he shows him Williams's body.
right.
Like, if you remember, like, he's just hung up with chains and he's bloodied. And I remember, like, I still hadn't accepted it yet because I remember watching it years ago, that I was like, oh, maybe he's alive. You know what I mean? Because I was like, you can't kill Williams. He's alive. They just beat him up really bad. And it's like, nah, man, he is gone. And the imagery of it is, it's very, very violent. Again, it leads into the nature of why a movie like this would be rated R. It's very violent. He's covered in blood. He's stripped down and he's just hanging by chains. And it's just like good. Like, the imagery of that in itself is just, it's pretty bad.
Right. And, you know, Roper's face sells the moment. I want to give credit to John Saxon for that moment, because he really pours it on when he sees Williams hanging. He looks away, he grimaces, and he makes these faces. And then when they drop him in the water, he just continues to just sell the moment that he ended up killing Williams. It wasn't like a light moment to see Williams dead
No,
like that.
yeah.
And so, Roper, he just says, "Oh yes, we understand each other." He doesn't give him an answer, but it's like, "Oh yeah, we fully understand each
Yeah.
other now." I took this down because now we're really getting to see just how ugly of a person, how evil Han is. And Han had such a cool monologue when he first came in to announce
Yeah.
himself to everybody, and now we're seeing the complete opposite. And I have the monologue here in front of us that I wanted to read here. Gentlemen, excuse me. Gentlemen, welcome. You honor our island. I look forward to a tournament of truly epic proportions. We are unique, gentlemen, in that we create ourselves through long years of rigorous training, sacrifice, denial, pain. We forge our bodies in the fire of our will. But tonight, let us celebrate. Gentlemen, you have our gratitude. He calls them gentlemen 3 times, almost as if to let their guard come down a little bit.
Yes.
He
Yes.
like a true villain,
Yep.
playing a mind game with everybody. When I heard his speech once again, I just get these thoughts of these iconic villains that we've seen over the years, mainly in video games. I'm thinking about M. Bison. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about Shang Tsung.
Shang Tsung on the beach, giving the
Yeah.
speech and everything, like Mortal Kombat and all that stuff. Like, yes, absolutely.
I'm thinking about these, these villains, and it's just like, yeah, here we go.
Again, it would not be wrong for us to assume that a lot of these later movies and whatnot take inspiration from Bruce Lee movies, let alone movies like Enter the Dragon. You know what I mean? So when we see these things that kind of parallel, it's safe to assume that it's not out of the realm of impossibility that these guys were like, hey, we're gonna pay a little homage to this Enter the Dragon moment.
So now Lee sneaks out again that same night. So now we're in super stealth mode, where he's, sneaking around, using his agility to get around. He's grabbing snakes by
Yeah,
the
dude.
head and putting them in bags. And get this, that was a real snake.
Yeah, dude. Look,
He was
Bruce
doing
is
it
that
for
dude.
Bruce was grabbing
Bruce is
cobras
that dude,
by
man.
the
Bruce is
head.
that dude.
Oh my goodness. And there's a funny scene where he throws the snake in the control room, and he's sitting there waiting.
He just waits. Yes.
Um, Bruce does comedy really well. For
Yes.
somebody with such a stoic appearance in his movies, really funny moments.
It is. I love the imagery. Like, if I could just take a still shot, I would have just sitting there, just waiting, just
Yeah.
patiently waiting for the snake to do its business. It's scary, but it's great.
So he does manage to send a message to Braithwaite, I believe, through what is that? Morse code. So
Yeah.
and Unfortunately, he is captured after a really long battle with all the guards, but we're talking like,
bro.
a lot of guys,
He
50,
was
60. We don't know how
dude.
many, 100.
He was going in, man. Bruce was dropping people left and right because that's what he does.
Yeah,
Like that's just what he does. And again, nobody does it like him. And
right.
it's just fun. It's just fun to watch him throw hands and kicks and strikes against all these people and just wing them around and making the sounds and facials and everything else. Like it's just a sight to behold.
Yeah. We finally get the nunchucks. So another
Yep,
just iconic scene. So we've
bro.
seen him with the fists, and now we see him with the nunchucks, and oh my goodness.
He's so nasty with the nunchucks, man. Like he's just,
Yeah.
man, again, like you just get to see how much time and dedication that he puts into his body, to his art, and just watching him just with his nunchucks, man.
Yeah.
And you're
Oh,
just like, good lord.
and he's feeling those every time they bounce off of him.
Yeah,
He's feeling
they're
them, but he is not selling it at all whatsoever. Just just really fast. There's a cameo here if you blink and you miss it, but I'm gonna get to that in a second.
mhm.
The opening scene, his sparring opponent was Sammo Hung.
Oh,
Sammo
okay.
Hung is a sparring opponent in the opening scene, and here a one of the thugs grabs him from behind. He puts the thug in a headlock, and he snaps his neck.
Mhm.
It's Jackie Chan.
Dude, look, it's so good. It's so good, man. Everybody comes from somewhere, bro. And Jackie
Yeah,
Chan was like, "Yo, I will be in here having Bruce Lee snap my neck. What's good?"
it's great. So by the way, I thought it was really cool that after all this time of the character of Lee just fighting everybody,
Mhm.
the he's trapped now in an enclosure. The walls, there's nothing he can do. So he crosses his legs, he puts the nunchucks over his neck, and he almost sits and waits and meditates, and you see all the
Yeah.
sweat pouring from his
Yep.
face.
It's such a great image because he, like, again, like you said, he puts the nunchucks around his neck and he just sits and he just waits. And I don't know why. Again, that's another image that I just appreciate.
So the next morning, Han arranges for Roper to fight Lee, but
Mhm.
Roper refuses. So as a punishment, Roper has to fight Bolo instead.
Bolo, baby.
Oh yeah. So he ends up overpowering Bolo and beating him. Enraged by an unexpected failure, Han commands his remaining men to kill Lee and Roper, and that's when
Yes.
things really start picking up.
This is a gigantic battle.
Yeah,
First
yeah,
of all, like I remember the first time I watched this. Again, we're talking I was a kid. I didn't think Roper was gonna beat Bolo, bro. Like
right.
they build him as this monster. I'm like, oh, we're gonna lose Roper
Well,
too.
well, well. He almost lost. If not for
He did.
biting, he bit
He
Bolo's
bit
leg.
his leg, bro. Listen, Bolo had him in, I believe it was an armbar, and being in one of those is you're getting snapped. That thing's getting snapped, and he bites him, and he just does not let go until he releases. And they fight, and they're going back and forth. And I remember as a kid being like, "Oh my god, wait!" Because Bolo is a monster, and you're seeing Bolo start taking licks here and there, and then he even gives him a shot in the crotch, and that's it. That's end game, and he falls over. And I was like, holy crap, he won. And then, like you said, this is when all hell breaks loose at this point.
Right. So just all the guys just start coming in. It gets like super exciting now. It's
Yeah.
just Lee and Roper versus all these guys. But when it looks like they're about to be overpowered, they are soon aided by the island's prisoners and the other invited martial artists who have now been freed
Mm-hmm.
by Mei Ling.
Yep.
So Han escapes and is pursued by Lee, who corners him in his museum, while Roper just stays out, being aided by the other prisoners and stuff, fighting Han's men. We get another iconic line where Lee confronts Han. He says, "You have offended my family, and you have offended the Shaolin Temple."
Mm-hmm.
And then they start fighting. Um, After the fight, Han runs away to a hidden mirror room, and
This is great. This is the
oh
good
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and before we got here, Han had already changed his metal hand into a bear claw,
Yes.
and he got Lee like maybe once outside, got maybe one cut, but Lee managed to move out the way, and the claw ended up getting, caught somewhere, so he had to leave
Yeah.
the claw behind. So now Han comes back in now, and he has a new claw now. It's more of a blades,
Mm-hmm.
like almost. I feel like we're talking about Street Fighter a lot, like Vega.
Vega,
Yeah, like
very
maybe,
Vega-esque,
yeah, maybe Vega
very
got his
Vega-esque.
inspiration from Han.
Again, yeah, like it's not wrong to think that a lot of these later films, video games, and whatever took inspiration, because it does. When you see it, he puts it on, and it's got, I think it's four. I think it's four blades. I think
Yeah,
I could be sure, but yeah, it's very for anybody who plays Street Fighter, it's very similar to like a Vega Claw, and
and
they're
it
going back and forth.
and it's hinted at that Han did this to himself so he could have attachments for his hand,
Yes,
because you
yeah.
see the human hand,
Mm-hmm.
and Roper says, "What's that?" And he says, "A souvenir."
A souvenir. Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's a souvenir of what he
it's
once had.
it's hinted at that Han is such a maniac that this is what he did. He chopped his
Yep.
own hand off to have weapons to attach to it.
To be able to have an attachable and detachable weapon to make for easy execution and fighting and whatnot advantages. And this is what what I was talking about earlier. This is probably for me the most iconic look when I think of Bruce Lee in movies, where he is shredded, sweaty, and he's got the blood claw marks against his abdomen, across the face, across his back, and he's walking around. I remember seeing so many posters as a kid growing up, so many imagery, whether it was comic books showing homage or whatever. Like, this was the look, like this was the iconic look of Bruce Lee that I remembered. So every time we get to this moment in the film, I'm always like, that's the look. Like, just that's the look.
Yeah, they're trading blows here in the mirror room,
Mm-hmm.
because Han retreated into here because he was losing the fight. And
Yeah.
so now the claw is starting to get Lee a little bit more. So you're starting to see the scratches, as you put it. The mirrors are giving Han an advantage, but Lee eventually starts smashing all the mirrors in the room
Mm-hmm.
to reveal Han's location, because obviously if it's a crack, then that's not the real Han. And he eventually kills him. Han had, I think, thrown a spear earlier
Yes.
in a fight, and Lee moved out of the way. So for the killing blow, Lee does the jump kick, and it throws Han back, and it impales him in the spear through the revolving door.
Yep, and it just
Oh,
continues to rotate, and it's such a great shot as Lee exits the room, and it just continues to rotate, and he's just hanging from the spear that's through his torso. It's a great shot.
so Lee returns outside to the main battle, which is now over. Everyone's defeated. Um, you know, both sides. People are just
Yeah.
either standing or laid out. Um, Lee and Roper exchange a thumbs up to each other to close the movie out. And the military finally arrived to take control of the island. And then the last shot we see is the bear claw,
Yep,
just,
and
just
it's just
sitting
stuck
there.
there. Yep.
Yeah. So that's our movie.
Yes, man. I
Yeah.
love Enter the Dragon. I love it. Again, we talked about, I love the 70s aesthetic. I love the feel. It's Bruce Lee. You got the tournament, you got the mission underneath the tournament that they have to go in there and infiltrate and everything else. And it's just it's one of those that, it's no surprise why it's so well loved by so many people. This is just one of those great movies, and like you said, one of his final full films that we get to watch. I'm grateful we get to watch it whenever we want now. Like, I remember growing up and watching it as a kid and just being like, man, this movie rules.
Yeah. Enter the Dragon is just timeless at this point.
Mhm.
We watched this when we were kids, most likely on TV,
Yeah.
a muted version. But
Yes,
now that we're older and we're still rewatching it, it still brings back all the memories. Enter the Dragon is a great movie.
it
It's
is.
just such a rewatchable movie, to use a
Mhm.
phrase. And it's just so iconic, so many iconic lines, so many iconic looks, fights. Um, it's just it's just awesome, you know.
Yeah, and when we talk about lines, and it's such a simple one, but we talked about it. My favorite, boards don't hit back. Like, I
Right.
love that line so much because, like you said, it almost felt like a wink to the camera, as well as the characters within the movie are speaking to one another, and he's obviously using to intimidate him. He's like, "Hey, boards don't hit back." Like you said, it was almost like a wink at the camera that, like, "Hey, like, in my teaching, like, I'm going to teach you this." But martial arts. I remember growing up as a kid, martial arts almost felt like visually cool. in terms of like as a kid, I didn't understand how much discipline was involved in martial arts, because as a child I'm seeing what we would consider to be the cool aspects, right? The fighting, the this, that, breaking boards, breaking bricks. I remember being a kid and going to a relative's birthday party that was martial arts themed, and they bought fake wooden boards because kids associated that with martial arts, right? We associate the idea of wood breaking and brick breaking and ice breaking. I was like, yeah, that makes me a good martial artist. If I can break through this, I'm a good martial artist. And that takes talent and skill, but there's more to martial arts than just that. And I love that just in that one line, it felt like he said that it was also a wink to that, hey, there's more to just breaking boards with martial arts. And as a kid, you're like, oh, there's more to that. And as adults now, we see how extremely disciplined you have to be in martial arts, and how excruciating and how tough it really is, and how it's about patience and learning, which can also tie into earlier in the film where he mentions like the art of fighting without fighting. Like there's so many layers in this movie that connects philosophy to martial arts, that showcased within the movie, but also talks about the reality of it in real life, that I appreciate about Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, and Game of Death ended up being his last movie, but that was because he only filmed a few scenes for it.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening is they used a stand-in for the other scenes, and
Mm-hmm.
it didn't turn out, well. It was released way
Yeah.
after his death, but for whatever reason, Enter the Dragon just hit, and audiences responded over not the years, the decades. Audiences
Yeah.
responded. So we're not going to do adjusted for inflation. We're just going to do as is here.
Mm-hmm.
The budget was 850,000.
Okay.
So in 1973, 850,000. The initial box office run was 100 million in
Bro,
1973 for a movie made for less than $1 million. Yeah,
that's money, dude.
yeah.
That's money. That it was a huge financial success. And after I watched it, I went and did some reading because I want to see what the world felt like when they watched it versus today. Because sometimes you'll have a movie that'll come out 70s, 80s that may not go necessarily over well, but over time it will develop a better following, whatever. But this was one of those movies that has been just loved from then till like it's just as loved now as it was then. And I think that's another thing that makes the movie really special, is that when the movie came out, it was a financial hit, it was a critical hit, people really enjoyed it, and to this day there are people that are probably watching it for the first time, as as the years go on, and people are still enjoying it, and it makes it an all-time classic in my opinion.
The box office did not stop at 100
Mhm.
million due to re-releases over the
Yeah.
years. Lee's death probably had a little bit to do with it, but
Mm-hmm.
also just the film just being such an iconic movie. In 1981, there's another number here due to re-releases, and the number went from 100 million box office to 220 million box office.
On a re-release.
Yeah, yeah. So that was for 81, and then we had another
Mhm.
one in 1998, and they're probably counting, maybe releases in between, maybe.
Yeah.
But the 1998 count, now we're up to 300 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have another count in 2001, only 3 years later, 400 million. That's where we're sitting at now for a movie made
Wow.
for 850,000, and this is not adjusted for inflation.
No,
So,
that is it's almost
yeah.
unheard of.
Yeah,
It's unreal.
Enter the Dragon made some money over the years.
Yeah.
So let's give some love to the cast here.
Yeah.
And obviously Bruce Lee as Lee. And it's just so funny. Like, the character's name is Lee, and
Yeah.
my name is
Yeah.
Bruce Lee,
It's and we've seen this happen in other movies. Like I can't tell you how many times I've seen a Jackie Chan movie where his name is Jackie in the
Yeah.
movie, and I almost felt like, oh, is that like an inside thing? Is that something they like to do? So Bruce Lee's just going to be Lee. I don't mind it at all. I think it's great actually.
Right. And it's almost like maybe he's playing an exaggerated version of Bruce Lee. So,
Yeah, you know what I mean.
the
Like
director was like, you know what? We'll call him Lee,
we'll call him Lee. It'll work out just fine.
We have John Saxon as Roper,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have Jim Kelly as Williams.
He was awesome, dude.
Yeah. I'm gonna give some love to Anna Capri as Tanya. She's the secretary and the lead woman.
Mm-hmm.
So she had her moments with Roper. in the
Yes.
movie, so I had to give her some love. Unfortunately, Tanya died. She didn't make it at the
Yeah.
end, unfortunately.
Yeah, you see her down, and I was like, "No."
No,
Like, I
yeah,
was like,
yeah. Come on,
"No."
man. She should be going back to the States
Yeah,
with
like, let's get her
Roper.
back. Yeah.
We have, forgive me if I mispronounce this, we have Shi Qian as Han,
Mhm.
and then the voice is dubbed by Kei
Yes.
Luke. We have Bob Wall as O'Hara, and I'll give a shout out to Su Lin, who played Lee's sister,
Mhm.
Angela Mao Yang, and Betty Chung as Mai Ling. I've already stated we have Sammo Hung in the opening scene, and then obviously Jackie Chan as the as the henchman there. Um, that's we've stated this already, but the thing that also makes Enter the Dragon special is that it wasn't just Bruce Lee that made the movie
No,
special.
it's not.
Solid
It's a
ensemble
it's
cast.
an ensemble cast. Like, usually, especially, I feel like in movies nowadays too, we see where, like, if you have a major action star or just a movie star in general, oftentimes a movie will rely on that one actor to carry the movie. It's like, hey, we're going to go see the insert person's name movie, right? And Enter the Dragon, while Bruce Lee is playing our lead character, it's the ensemble cast that makes this whole movie work. So even though a lot of the movie rides on Lee as a character and Bruce Lee, Bruce, when you think Enter the Dragon, you think Bruce Lee. There's a great cast around this guy in this movie. So, like, there are scenes that Lee is not in, and you're not pulled out of the movie. You're not like, okay, we're at the boring scene. No, you're involved and you're into it. Like watching Roper with Han, like those scenes were intense. Watching the scene with Williams is intense. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just as involved in those characters as much as I am with our lead character. And that's always a fun thing when you're supporting cast and side characters can have you as an audience as engaged as our lead. That's a win-win for everybody. So the cast is great.
Alrighty, so we're gonna start winding things down here with some closing thoughts. Um, there have been so many amazing martial arts movies over the years, especially modern day times. You think about the Matrix. You think about, well, let's go further back. John Claude Van Damme, Bloodsport,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then a throwback. We have Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Um, eventually Kill Bill. Kill Bill Volume 1, Kill Bill Volume 2.
Oh yeah.
Uh, we have The Raid.
Mm-hmm.
We have, we can just keep going on and on. John Wick,
Dude.
on and on. These movies, I'm not going to say they don't happen because we've had other, kung fu movies,
Mm-hmm.
martial arts movies, Five Deadly Venoms,
Yeah.
old school. But if not for the global success of Enter the Dragon, paving the way, well, excuse me, let me retract that. Maybe, they owe some of their success to Enter the Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
becoming such a box office success to the point where, let's pose this question here. Is Enter the Dragon the greatest martial arts movie of all time?
There will be people that will argue that, and I can't
Yeah,
say they're wrong. I can't
right.
say they're wrong. Like, it's all subjective, and there are many people that might pull out a different film or whatnot from a different actor, a different martial artist, and hey, it's all subjective. But this is that. I don't know. There's something ideally classic and special about this one. And I think it's hard for anybody to not think of Enter the Dragon when you're thinking of the greats. I think it's that conversation of like, where in a very similar fashion, and I don't want to bring this genre up at the moment, but when people think of comic book films, they measure The Dark Knight, right? Like, that's the measure, that's the go-to. You can't help it. It's kind of hard for anybody, or myself at least, to think of the great martial arts film and Enter the Dragon isn't in there. Like, that doesn't compute to me. The fact that it wouldn't come up doesn't make any sense. And I think that's why it resonates so well, and why many people would argue that this is probably the best, martial arts film. This might be, for many people, their favorite Bruce Lee film, their favorite cast with Bruce Lee as an ensemble. Like, there's a lot of good variables about Enter the Dragon that I think go a long way. So I couldn't tell anybody that they're wrong if this is their favorite or if this is the best in their opinion.
I looked it up. I had to look at a few lists, and I want to say maybe half the lists I saw Enter the Dragon was number one.
Yeah,
If it
you
wasn't,
can't.
if it wasn't number one, it was really close to number one.
Yeah.
So
I feel
um,
like it's always going to be in that conversation, even as time continues. Like this was 1973. We are now in 2023, and Enter the Dragon is still in that conversation. And I don't see it leaving that conversation. I just don't see it because of everything that we mentioned. And again, it just has something unique and special to it.
right. And for the 50th anniversary, I saw that it was re-released in theaters, and I saw things in my social media with people talking about it,
Yeah.
so it's still special, 50 years later. And if it is not the greatest, if it's not one of the greatest, it is the greatest to some people and vice versa, and that's
Mhm.
okay. All film is subjective. We say that all the time.
Yeah. It's all
But
subjective.
I did want to follow it up with another one that's, I don't know, another controversial statement here. Is Bruce Lee the greatest martial artist of all time? Is he the GOAT?
Listen.
Whew. Yeah.
When Bruce Lee is my guy. Like that, like if someone
Right.
asks me, I'm like, it's Bruce Lee. And we can, we can compare things and stories and stats, if you will, but there's going to be others as well that have left their stamp. Again, many people argue, can there ever be another Jackie Chan? Can there ever be another Donnie Yen? Can there ever, you know what I mean? Like there's other actors as well. And I don't think there can be, but there's something about Bruce Lee, about how he carried himself in his films and as a person. There's something very philosophical about him. There's something unique about him in the sense of his teaching, his words. I feel that there are other martial artists that I fell in love with them for their martial arts movies, where I fell in love with Bruce Lee, not just for his movies, but who he was as a person. And I think that's what helps him separate from the other martial artists that I love. Like when I was a kid, I was a really big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, the Muscles from Brussels. I was a really big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme. I still am. But that was because from just a movie martial arts perspective. Like I was like, yeah, I really like him. Same thing with guys like Chuck Norris. There are a lot of people that love Chuck Norris. You have the Chuck Norris jokes and everything like that, but it all resonates from Chuck Norris, in my opinion, as an actor. But with Bruce, it always felt like him making movies was a cherry on top. That was a bonus that we got from Bruce, because even without Bruce Lee making movies, I still think he'd go down as arguably the greatest martial artist who ever lived, because of just his philosophy, his way of thinking, his words. Be water, my friend. You know what I mean? Like, just I could watch movies with other martial artists, but not necessarily want to sit and watch them discuss certain things. Where Bruce, I could watch him in movies and I could sit for hours and just listen to him talk. Again, as I mentioned with you, where like if there was a person who was no longer with us that I could sit with and have a conversation with, Bruce Lee would be one of those people. Like he's extremely special. And I don't even know if it's considered a hot take, to be honest. I don't know. I've heard martial artists today. I absolutely have, who believe there are better martial artists today than Bruce Lee was. I've heard that other side. I've heard that other conversation. I've heard it. I've heard it from people saying, "Oh yeah, like Bruce Lee today couldn't beat this martial artist today," and that's a conversation that where people can to have. And I'm not that well versed in martial artists today, sadly, but from what I know, from what I grew up with, and from what I've seen from him on screen versus him as a person, it's hard for me to think that there's anybody better than Bruce Lee. For me.
Well, it's an easy answer for me. The answer is yes for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, he's Bruce Lee's the GOAT.
He's the guy.
He's a trailblazer. He did so many things. We have a Chinese man just breaking up, becoming a star in the United
Mm-hmm.
States as a martial arts star. He studied Wing Chun Kung Fu, one of the oldest, styles ever, and then he ended up founding his own Jeet Kune Do. So he
Mm-hmm.
did that. He's doing interviews, once again, just doing these interviews, promoting himself, promoting the art of you know, martial arts, promoting his philosophies. You know, you hear so many people that list him as an inspiration, not only as a martial artist, but as you stated, as a human being. To me, I feel like it's an easier answer for me to say that Bruce Lee is a GOAT. When it
Yeah.
comes to martial arts in general, and And once again, if you have a favorite, that's cool too. That you consider them the GOAT. You know, there's other people like you. I've heard people say that may or may not have surpassed Bruce Lee. You
Yeah.
know, Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Donnie Yen. You know, we can go on and on. But for me, just for what he's done for the martial arts community and as a human being and his place in history, Bruce Lee's the GOAT. So
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't an easy path for any of them, but for Bruce at the time of his life, where the United States was with anybody, any people of color, Asians, anyone, it was not an easy thing to do what he did. He, like you said, he's a trailblazer, an absolute trailblazer, and the amount of hard work and dedication that he put into everything and became a bona fide star when the cards were stacked against him in such a way that Bruce Lee, in a way, kind of opened that door for others that many would see are like him to be able to do those things. You know what I mean? Like, if you ask a lot of maybe younger generations, like, they might think of Jackie Chan first. They might be like, oh, Jackie Chan, like, he started doing American movies, the Rush Hour movies, and we started watching him in Drunken Master and Super Cop and and all types of things. But like, Bruce Lee for years and years was trailblazing and kind of, maybe kick down that door, and going through everything that he went through and still rising to the top is nothing to look past. It's an unbelievable feat what he did.
all right, folks, that was the Panel Bros official breakdown of Enter the Dragon, to correlate with Enter the Dragon's 50th anniversary. Happy 50th. Folks, if you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we would appreciate it. We also would like if you gave us a follow. That helps us with our reach. Also, please, if you could let us know in the comments below how you felt about Enter the Dragon. If you could give it a rewatch and let us know, or just let us know your thoughts. Is Enter the Dragon the greatest martial arts movie of all time? Is Bruce Lee the greatest martial artist of all time? Please let us know in the comments below. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.